Micron stock might be worth $800, and from today's price of $343, that represents an upside of $133. But before you pull up your Robinhood app and all in your portfolio into Micron stock, you might want to take a few minutes to watch this video. So if you play video games or you're looking to build your new PC, you might have came across videos like this.
RAM prices are skyrocketing right now. Let's see how that's going to work out for consumers. Heads, consumers lose. Tails, manufacturers win. Consumers lose. It's heads.
Or this.
Price inflation comes for us all, and if you're not affected yet, just wait. I was building a new PC last month using some parts I had bought earlier this year. This 64GB T-Create DDR5 memory kit cost $209 back then, and it's right there on the sticker. Today, the same exact thing from the same place costs $650. That's over 3 times as expensive.
Maybe even this.
If you've been following the tech news, you know exactly what's going on. Right now, every single technological device you can think of is facing the same fate, the RAM crisis. Take a look at these two builds. They are the exact same. The one on the left was built exactly 3 months ago, and the one on the right is from today. The only difference between them is the RAM. For the last month and a half, the world has been experiencing a serious RAM crisis. And trust me, we are facing a situation far scarier than just rising RAM prices. DRAM and NAND manufacturers are suffering from supply shortages. AI investments are continuing at full speed. Geopolitical tensions are rising.
So although we love our fellow gamers, we love making money even more, right? And honestly, they should go outside, touch some grass, and forget about their computers anyways. So when we take a look at the big beneficiaries from this DRAM shortage, we have first and foremost Micron Technology, where their stock is up 84% in the past 91 days. SK Hynix, where their stock is up 123% in the past 98 days. And Samsung, where their stock is up 53.8% in the past 86 days. But of course, we can't forget the king of them all, Standard stock, which is up a staggering 1,100%, right? But of course, in this video, we're going to be focused on Micron Technology and why its stock could hit $800. But of course, to kick off this story, we have to rewind a little bit to October 1st, where we see this news article from our favorite private company, OpenAI. And OpenAI basically signed a deal with SK Hynix and Samsung to lock up 40% of the global DRAM supply, right? So 40% of the whole world supply, just snap of a fingers, OpenAI, they got it. So what happens after that deal? Basically to Micron stock, nothing. Because in the next 42 days, Micron stock goes up, Micron stock goes back down, and they end up at a net zero position, right? But in the next few weeks, you can see Micron stock actually climbed a little, and when they released their earnings, the floodgate just released because they had spectacular earnings as well as crazy forward guidance for investors to hear. And off the back of that earnings report, Micron is basically up 54% in the past like 28 days or 4 weeks, right? So we're all caught up to the present day now where we have 100 gigawatts of new capacity of data centers building by 2030. Do I think all of the capacity is going to get filled? Obviously not. But do I think a lot of the capacity is going to get filled? I think the answer to that is yes, right? And when we fast forward a bit, July 2025, that's when Trump introduces this Speed Act. And this Speed Act, the gist of it is data centers, you need permitting, here's a permit, here's a permit, here's a permit, you need more permitting, throw all the permits at them and let them build the data centers. So the next question, when do all these data centers get built, right? You can see that data center permitting and approval usually takes 6 to 24 months. And when did we see this Trump speed bill? July 2025. So we can only imagine that a lot of data centers are going to come online in the next 6 to 24 months, right? Which is February 2026 up to July 2028, right? So all these factors result in Micron, SK Hynix, and also Samsung saying that their HBM capacity, which is high bandwidth memory, which all these data centers need, is sold out to the end of 2026, right? And if you don't know, Samsung, Micron, and also SK Hynix represents about 90% of the market. So basically, everything sold out, right? And although their production capacity and also volume have been fixed for this year, SK Hynix and Micron have announced that they will be looking to increase capacity and also do more business, right? Sell more HBMs. And not only that, because SK Hynix and Samsung actually came out on the 5th of January to say that they are hiking DRAM prices as much as 70%, right? Obviously, we are not privy to all this information because their contracts and everything are between their parties and also customers. But we will be able to see this in Samsung's next earnings that comes out this Thursday. So obviously, if you're interested in this, hit the subscribe button because I'll be covering the DRAM shortage and also all the news articles regarding DRAM and DRAM prices. And some people might be asking, what does Samsung and SK Hynix have to do with Micron, right? Because if Samsung and SK Hynix raise their prices, Micron will have pricing power to raise their prices also. And as mentioned, it is under fixed contract right now, but obviously the 2027 backlog would be very, very important, right? If Micron comes out and says, oh, our 2027 backlog is filled as well, then the stock will obviously get a big boost and maybe we'll be seeing higher and higher price targets, right? Because when we take a look at the price targets that were set by analysts just a few days ago, right? On the January 6th, Bernstein came out and raised their price target to 330 from 270. And today the stock is already at 343, right? So these analysts can't get their targets up high enough, right? So they will keep upping and upping their targets. So next, let's talk about price targets. You can see my bear case here is $315, and we get there by 315 times 10, which is 10 times earnings, where we get a $315 stock price. So where am I getting these estimates from? This is the earnings per share by analysts. It's at a range of $31.50 to $37.25, right? So you can see obviously here 230% growth year over year. It's an insane growth, right? And when we come to the base case, middle of analyst estimates, my prediction is that $34.375 times a 15 times earnings, where we get a $515 price target. So again, how did I get this number? I add these two numbers and then I divide it by 2, right? And we get an average estimate of $34.375, right? And then for the last, it's a bull case, right? Where I have $40.975 and a 20 times earnings, and we get our $820 price target, where I put 800 here so it's easier for me to remember. But we get this target by saying that even the most bullish estimates, they are not bullish enough, right? And so Micron will come out and destroy the EPS targets and destroy the revenue estimates. And then they get to a very high PE of 20. For cyclical, this is incredibly high, right? You might think, oh, for Google, for Meta, they have 30 times earnings. Why is it for Micron 20 times is very high? It's because this is a cyclical business where it's also like a commodity, right? And I think this is the most important thing that we have to watch, right? The current gross margin is at 56%, right? And according to all the past historical data, Micron's gross margins have never been across 60%, right? So if we are really in a memory super cycle, which is the only way that we can get to this kind of price targets, I would expect the gross margins to hit 65, even 70%, right? At the highest, right? And that is the time to sell, right? You might be saying at that time, oh, it's so cheap or something like that. Memory super cycle will continue. But as I mentioned and as I've drawn here, right? When it comes to half to 2026, this stock becomes higher and higher risk, right? Because the more supply comes online, the more prices will compress until eventually the gross margins will follow down, the net profits will follow down, and then that's why we have a memory cycle, right? So after talking about all of that, the story, the price targets, we also have to talk about the bearish scenario and the risk, right? You can see number one of the bearish scenario is that we are actually quite overbought on the RSI, even on the weekly, and you can see it's a straight line up, right? It's never a good idea to go all in when something is going a straight line up, unless you're some sort of trader, you're gonna buy today, sell tomorrow. I think for most of us, we don't have the skill to pull that off. But if you are waiting to get into this stock and you are not already in it, I would suggest waiting for a pullback, maybe for the RSI to go back to 70 on the weekly or something like that, right? The second bearish scenario is obviously OpenAI, right? Because we know that OpenAI is burning a lot of money and needing a lot of funding, right? Because they are not a profitable company, and yet they are burning money like drunken sailors, right? So the third risk is too much production coming online and the DRAM prices getting squeezed, right? And that is the biggest risk that we should watch out for, right? So for now, we can only watch catalyst by catalyst, right? So the next catalyst I'm watching is obviously the Samsung earnings. What do they say about the DRAM pricing? How much more contracts that they got and stuff like that. We have to really monitor this month by month, week by week, and also day by day, right? So we can't just say, oh, this is not one of those set it and forget it investments where you can just forget about it, right? So what are my personal expectations? I don't expect it to go to 800, right? Unfortunately, even though I have a clickbaity title, this is a possibility in my head, but I wouldn't think this is a 90% chance or something, right? In fact, I think this is maybe a 20% chance if I'm being optimistic, right? I think this is the 50% chance which I would put, which is the base case, right? And I think $500 something is very achievable within 2026, right? This is not something that you want to hold for the next 10 years. So I think this $515 price target is quite achievable within the 2026, right? So as I mentioned, I don't have too much visibility into the future regarding this stock, so I have to monitor it very closely day by day. I actually track the RAM prices and everything like that, right? So obviously, if it needs to be said, none of this is financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. This is just my analysis and my investment thesis on Micron. So yeah, with that being said, that's about all I wanted to share today. If you did enjoy the video, do help me smash up the like button, hit subscribe, and also hit the bell button. With that being said, have a fantastic day ahead, and peace out.